Alright, so we got the computer. We did all the benchmarks. So now what we're going to do, we have everything backed. I backed up the entire computer onto, I have a 500 gig Western Digital Passport USB hard drive, which unfortunately on the Power Macs you can't boot from. You can, but it's a nightmare to try to do it. So what we're going to do is we're going to shut the machine down and we're going to tear it apart. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, this video is not going to be a how to tear apart the iMac video. If you really want to see me tear apart the iMac, I've done it before on a live stream. The whole stream is somewhere over an hour long. It's on my YouTube channel. Please feel free to watch it. If you have one of these machines and you want to service it in any way, please get a service manual. If you need a service manual, I'll be glad to give it to you. These things are a nightmare to deal with. There's probably going to be chunks where you're going to see me not doing things. Like I can tell you right now, I am not going to film taking the bezel off because it's going to be a 30-minute process just to get the stupid bezel off this machine. It's a nightmare every time I have to work on it. So, but I will try to film most of the tear apart put together, and I will stop in certain parts and explain what I'm doing, this, that, and the other thing, especially when it comes to doing like the repaste and stuff like that, because that's important. So we're going to shut it down and we're going to get right to it. Alright, so we got the board out. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take a quick look over the board. Just take notice to anything that looks unusual. You know, there's all kinds of electrolytic capacitors on this board, and these all look very, very good. There's no leakage. Down here we have 512 megs of memory, which is built onto the computer. This computer can have 2.5 gigs of memory total. There's a DIMM slot on the other side, I'll show you. There's the CR2032 battery, which I need to replace that. It's no good. Apparently it went dead. So yeah, I'm not sure which is which, but one of these is the CPU, one of these is the video chip. I'm pretty sure this one's going to be the CPU because this has got two heat pipes going into a larger heat sink, whereas this one only has a single heat pipe going into a smaller heat sink here. So, but we're going to pull both of these off. We're going to replace both of these while we got this machine apart. Not really much else of note. As most of you know, this is a prototype machine. It is all but production, but this one also has a card reader, an SD card and CF card reader right here, which is the only difference that we know of besides the ROM on this board that is different from a normal iMac G5 eyesight. So we're going to go on the other side of the board. I'm not exactly sure what's underneath here, but I'm going to leave it alone unless I can see an easy way of taking this heatsink off, because this isn't screwed on or held on with any standard heatsink screws. So nothing really of note over here. Most of the capacitors and everything are all on the other side of the board. But we're just going to take a look here, just make sure we don't see anything strange, you know, popping out that looks like it might fail in the near future. So now we're going to what's that? So now we're going to pull the heat sinks off and go from there. See what happens and see what all that looks like. Okay, so we have the heat sinks off, and let me tell you, the heatsink design on this computer sucks. So we're going to do a quick little look around here. I apologize for my camera skills. I'm not a professional. I'm a computer technician and a mechanic. I am not a videographer. So this is the PowerPC 750FX running at 2.1 gigahertz. So this is actually the last version of the PowerPC G5 chip that Apple ever used. And then over here we have the Radeon X600 video chip, which actually has its own dedicated, I think it's 128 megs of memory. It's not a lot. It might be 256 megs. But it does have its own dedicated memory right here and right here. So these two chips are like two primary chips on the board, and these need to be kept pretty cool. The ATI chip doesn't run real hot, but this 750, oh my god, this thing will freaking fry an egg well done in 3 seconds flat, assuming it doesn't burn itself up first. So, but as you see, we got them all nice and cleaned off. I just use I use this plastic scraper to scrape the old stuff off as best I can, and then just use some 90% isopropyl alcohol. Down here we have some plastic little pegs. We're going to pop these out, and that should pop the heatsink off the other side. And if I'm correct, underneath that should be a it's going to be like the primary bus controller for the board. So we're going to do that now. And we're going to take a look underneath that. We're probably going to put some new thermal paste on that while we got this computer apart. So to just try to make it last as long as possible before anything blows up. So here we go. So as you can tell here, this is it's upside down to you. This is the IBM Kodiak chip, which is also the Northbridge chip on this board. It's a bus controller. It controls everything on the computer. Now the interesting thing is that the G5 tower actually has a separate fan just to blow air on this chip, and this computer actually does too. This thing gets very, very hot, but it's actually kind of interesting. It actually has it's actually an IBM part. It has an IBM part number and everything on it. So I've never actually seen one like bare like this. So, but you see, we clean the heat sink up. So we're going to repaste this as well while we're in here, because these suckers run hot, and all of the thermal paste in here, when I scraped it off, just crumbled. So it's definitely overdue for this. So we're going to get to doing that and go from there. Is done, so now we're going to do the ATI video card and the PowerPC 750. And while I got this off, I just want to take a quick squiz here at this chip. It doesn't actually have any identifying marks on it that would identify it as an actual IBM processor or anything, which isn't terribly surprising. I'm just curious, because this being a prototype system, I wonder if I doubt it's a oh yeah, it is an IBM processor. So it's kind of hard to see, but it does say, where's my little stick at? It does say IBM, and it does have an IBM FRU here, and then right here it says PowerPC 970FX. So yeah, this is a real IBM processor, which, if I remember it, I think all the G5s were. So I'm going to leave that plastic cover off. I don't think there's really much of a reason for it to be there. But that's all it is. I mean, that's all the bigger that little sucker is. I mean, that little chip there, that's it. That's the processor. Pretty amazing. That tiny little thing can make so much heat. So now we're going to get on to pasting the rest of it. Okay, so now after all that maddening disaster, I don't know who designed this board, but it's ridiculous. Everything's back together. Got both our heat sinks back on the front, or actually I should say the back. This is actually the back of the board because of the ports. And then on the front, we have the Northbridge heat sink replaced. New thermal paste under here. New thermal paste under both these. And that's all that really needs to be repasted on this machine, and hopefully it will extend the life of this machine much beyond, you know, it's actually way beyond its life now. So now we get to put it all back together, and that's probably just as maddening as doing the heat sinks. So it's a very compact and dense board, and this computer was never designed for this processor, I can tell you that. It's a very hot computer, to say the least. So, but one last look, and I'm going to take 24 megapixel pictures of this board for the simple fact that it is a quote-unquote prototype. I do have some pictures I took with my iPhone, but I'm going to take some high-res pictures with my good digital camera while I have this out of the computer, and so that anybody who's interested can see exactly what this board looks like. So those will probably be up on my buddy's website, Jay. He's into that kind of stuff. I'm not a website guy, so so now we're going to start putting it back together. Okay, so I have the whole computer put back together. I just did it off camera because it's so time consuming and laborious. It's a pain in the butt. So I have the SSD mounted, and I'm just using some double-sided tape for lack of anything better to use, because there's no real way to mount one of these in an iMac like this. But I do have the temperature sensor mounted on top of the drive, and so now this opens up a lot more room for this fan here to circulate. So I'm thinking that in a long run that this will help more air circulate through this machine. So now we're going to put the LCD screen back in, which is kind of a pain in its own right. This thing is heavy, and there it says engineering sample, which I think is kind of interesting. So there's two inverter cables. There's one at the bottom, one at the top, one each for the backlights, and then there's the data cable right there. Have I mentioned how much of a pain in the ass this computer is to work on? I don't think I mentioned that yet. I think this has to be one of the most annoying computers in the world to even touch. Great computer to use, though. There we go. Jesus, what a pain. So, and then we have the LVDS cable here, which connects here. This is the last connection. And then we can gently, and this LCD is heavy, by the way. Alright, there's that. And then the only other thing we have to connect is the ambient light sensor, or the infrared sensor. Oh yeah, that's right. It connects here. And it actually connects to that heatsink right there. With microscopic little screws. So we're going to do that and then we'll come right back. Okay, so as you can see, I have the machine running, but the problem is I have it running on OS X server 10.4.7 right now. For some reason, I tried restoring my backup to the new SSD, and it didn't want to work right. So I can't find my 10.4 disc. I do have original copies of OS 10.4 Tiger for the Power Macs, but I can't find it at the moment. So I grabbed the next thing I had, which was server for the Power Mac, because this is what I run on my G5 tower. So we are restoring at the moment. We are trying to restore again through the actual server software, and we're going to see if that works, and hopefully it does, so we can go back through and do our benchmarks again and see what happens. So we will be back.